The S22 Ultra, I think, is probably the best Samsung phone they ever made. It's fantastic. It's near perfect. Whenever it comes to Android phones, I like it a lot. I've made lots of videos about it, and I'm looking forward to the S23 Ultra because I think it's going to fix the two things that kept this phone from being as great as it could be. Now, still very good. I still think it's the best flagship phone of 2022, but let's talk about it. The Snapdragon 8 Generation 1, not the best. Whenever it comes to battery and performance ratio, it's a hot chip. Like, it gets hot. And that's something that they had to mitigate with a lot of software throttling that it really is not the greatest thing in the world. However, lots of power, lots of performance. They increased the stuff on the machine learning, the AI, all that good stuff. There were a lot of advancements they made in this chip. But a lot of people are really already got their sights ahead for the Snapdragon 8 Generation 2. And from what we've seen with the Snapdragon 8 Plus Generation 1, I think it's probably on the right track because the 8 Plus Generation 1 definitely was a nice change of pace whenever it came to thermals, when it came to heat, when it came to battery and power efficiency. We got a 5,000 milliamp battery, but it just doesn't seem like a 5,000 milliamp battery. I mean, yeah, you're going to get 5.5, 6 hours screen on time with some fairly decent usage, but whenever you really crank it up, if you want to do some gaming, you want to fire up, do some 4K video, take some photos, if you use it a lot with the screen on, the battery life is not as good as it could be. So I think that those are the two major things we're going to look at when it comes to the S23, and everybody already knows this. I mean, they've already got benchmarks out there, synthetic benchmarks, all that stuff showing for the Snapdragon 8 Generation 2, which was recently announced at the Snapdragon Summit, which is pretty cool. So when we talk about the tiny little piece of silicon that goes in there, I think that that's really going to take it to the next level. And normally, I would be very critical about design changes, kind of keeping things the same. And look, we all know this. The S22 Ultra, this is the Note 22 Ultra. Like, it's almost identical in shape and form, other than the camera module on the back, to the last Note, the Note 20 Ultra, which was pretty good. Terrible battery life on that one too, by the way. But it's kind of how things go, especially with Samsung. They always put so much in there, and that's one thing we love about Samsung. They throw the entire kitchen sink into the phone. And then what always holds it back is the battery life. And it seems like anytime they make any advancements in battery life, they eat them up with new features. So it's like, so they keep pushing the envelope, and then they keep like opening the envelope because they keep adding all these features, which we like, but it does eat up the battery. What we've run into now, as the chips have gotten smaller and smaller and they keep pushing that silicon edge even farther and farther with power, well, it's battery life, it's heat issues. And we saw this with the Google Tensor G1. We saw this with the Snapdragon 8 Generation 1. They first, I mean, I want to say first, but they really ran into a serious problem with it last year with the 888. When the Snapdragon 888 first came out, it was having a lot of problems, especially OnePlus. I mean, you couldn't shoot a 4K video for like 2 minutes without that sucker shutting down because it would get so hot. And of course, the S21 Ultra, it would get hot too, but at least it wasn't quite as bad. But there's been a lot of throttling. I mean, we had the whole throttle gate thing with Samsung already. I mean, their phones for the last couple generations have been moved and like taken down and have like an asterisk next to them for the benchmark scores because they were throttling so many of their apps and under the guise of the gaming software. The gaming software wasn't just throttling the gaming apps, it was throttling basically everything, which is really bad because it's not transparent. It's okay if you tell us up front, look, there's a mode where you can turn the power down and you can throttle stuff, but give us the control over that. And now they have like the light mode with the fold. We're of course going to see that with the S23 Ultra and that when it comes out. I can pretty much guarantee it. But I do miss the days they've taken it out. Like there used to be the enhanced processing option. You could have it where stuff wouldn't be throttled. I don't like stuff to be throttled. Now, sometimes it's okay. I don't really mind so much if it's Facebook or if it's Twitter. I mean, some low priority stuff. You don't need everything running at 1,000% on those apps. It's very much akin to the idea of the variable motors when it came to the engines. Like Dodge, maybe Dodge was the first one to do it. I'm not sure. But they had the 8-cylinder engine, and then when you're on the highway, it would throttle down to 4 cylinders. Like it would just kind of shut the other 4 off because you don't need them. You don't need to be using all that power when you're cruising down the highway already at your speed. That's very similar to what they do here. You got a lot of power. There's 8 cores in here, and what they can do is they can shift it. They can run it on the lower powered cores, or they can run the higher power core at a lower frequency. They don't have to give everything like 1,000% juice. So that's what they do with these different modes. They do the throttling, and that's been their way to work around it, because you can't really put a whole lot in here to mitigate the heat. If we look over here, stage right at my gaming PC, I've got a big dual radiator fan, I've got water cooling, I've got fans out the wazoo in there, all this ventilation, because they require a lot of power. With the SoC, the system on a chip, you don't have to do that, but this is what it is. This little guy right here, this is the MediaTek Dimensity 9200, the latest MediaTek flagship. This just got announced a couple weeks ago at the MediaTek Summit, which I was very fortunate to go to. This tiny little thing right here is what powers everything on these phones. A 5G modem, the GPU for the graphics, you got the APU, or you got the Tensor Core, or whatever they want to call it, for all the machine learning and the AI stuff. Then you got all the 8 different cores. I mean, there's a whole lot in there. A whole lot in that tiny little piece of silicon. They keep making it thinner and thinner and thinner. We're down to 4 nanometers now, which is just crazy. 4 nanometer process. And I think it seems like we've been stuck here a little bit. They haven't been crazy about jumping to the 3. I think we'll see the 3 probably towards the end of next year. But we're still with the 4 nanometer process. And I think they've realized that they're pushing the envelope with as much power and juice and heat and all that stuff. We don't have all those things in here. And recently I got a phone that I tested out. It was the Red Magic 7S Pro. It was cool. A little bit thicker phone, but it had a built-in 20,000 RPM, rotations per minute, cooling fan in there, active cooling. Could you imagine what we could do with these crazy super powered phones if they all had at least like a little fan in there that would circulate and suck some of that hot air out? That would be cool. So until we get there though, we're stuck with heat sinks and these heat piping and all sorts of stuff that they try and do, vapor chambers. Basically all it is just trying to wick away some of that heat from the system on a chip. There's only so much you can do. Really, there is. And that's where all that software stuff comes in it. So I think what we're going to see, fundamentally probably a very similar shape when it comes to the overall design on the phone. But with that Snapdragon 8 Generation 2, I think it's going to fix the 2 things that kept this from being as great as it could be. And that is, it's going to give us better battery life, better battery and power coefficient, less thermal problems, and overall I think it's going to give us a better experience. I still think we're going to have some significant throttling when it comes to a lot of stuff that really doesn't need to be there. And the nice thing is that throttling doesn't apply to games usually. When you play games, it opens up everything, but then that's when you really see a drastic change. And that's one of the things you see with these phones. You can tell when they're not throttled anymore, because when they're not throttled, that's when you look on your battery graph and it goes like this, and then it just drops off. And that's because like all hands on deck, it's running everything, it's getting hot, and when phones get hot, they become less efficient, so then you're burning more battery. So that's what I'd like to see. That's what I believe we're going to see. And that's going to be a big, big win for the S23 Ultra, I believe, this next year, because the S22 Ultra, if we could get those 2 extra things, better battery life and that better processing, power efficiency, heat management, all that stuff, those 2 things I think are going to take it to the next level. And I mean, I already called the S22 Ultra basically from the get-go the best flagship of the year. It's been such a good phone. And of course, we have other great phones like the Pixel 7 Pro. Fantastic phone in its own right. I think when you stack the 2 up, I think the S22 Ultra gets a leg up just because of a couple extra little things here and there. But you're looking at $11.99 versus $8.99. So that $300 makes a significant difference when you're making especially a value-based proposition. I mean, when you take a look at some of the differences that you get, the 100 times zoom, you also get the stylus and all that great stuff. You get decks, wireless decks. I mean, there's a couple things that really do help the S22 Ultra stand up out of the crowd. Slightly better screen. I think overall, slightly better camera package. Not the primary camera, not the shutter speed. I think the selfie on here is really, really impressive on the S22 Ultra. I think it's very good on the Pixel 7 Pro, but I think the selfie camera on here, I think it's a little bit better. So there's some give and take, but the S22 Ultra, beautiful phone, great phone. I think it's worth $11.99, but gosh darn it, $8.99 for the Pixel 7 Pro is a fantastic price. And I mean, they even had it recently on sale for $750. So you got to kind of weigh what it is your priorities are, what you want. Some people like a lot of the Google software services. They like a lot of the smart features and things like that you get with the machine learning, the computational photography, top notch, best smartphone camera in the world, tied for best in the world, best in the US. So there's a lot of great things to talk about there. But the S22 Ultra, I think, is really going to get that nice little upgrade, that nice little tweak to the last little bit of stuff to keep it really, really competitive and take it to the next level. So that's all I got in this video. If you have any questions or comments, please go to the comment section. I will get back with you. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like and the subscribe button and a little notification bell if you want updates when new videos come out. And as always, thanks for being here. I appreciate you watching, and I'll see you guys next time.